Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to week 5 for our class. I'm just got back and I was walking outside, and here in West Lafayette it's cold. There were snow flurries. Everyone's bundled up. I think I need to break out my long jacket. So I know some of you live in cold places, but I know a lot of you live in warm places. So if you live in a warm place, you should be super thankful right now. So this week, what we're going to be talking about is continuing this idea of crisis communication and kind of building off of, I know last week for the discussion question, it asked you to sort of formulate these crisis responses. And what we're doing this week for your extra assignment, in addition to the discussion question, is a mock crisis drill. And basically, you're going to take one of the scenarios that are, and I pulled these up. If you look here, there's 1, 2, 3. They're kind of just some different nuances, and you're asked to create a crisis communication plan. Now, again, a couple of things I want to say about that. One is this is only 3 to 4 pages, so it's not going to, have everything. You're going to want to focus on what it talks about here. So understanding your publics or audiences, internal employees, media, and stakeholders. And you're going to write the deliverables. And really what you're doing is the crisis drill. You're really on this one, you're not creating the entire plan because these audiences have been created for you, but you're going to write sort of what would your message be. And then along with that, potentially what would be the channels you would disseminate that. So example for the media, would you issue a press release? Would you have a press conference? And how you're going to use social media to contact your stakeholders directly. Also, how are you going to disseminate this information to your internal employees? So it says your responses to these 3 key publics should feature strategic messaging, decisions, and directions, right? So thinking about what we've been talking about up to this point, not just what should you say in your message, but how should you say it? How does that work? And so again, 3 to 4 pages, these can be bullet points, for your message. Allow yourself some creativity. I also I want to also emphasize that there's no one right way to create even a crisis communication plan. There's no one right way to draft up the message. What I'm looking for is, have you thought about what are the unique needs of each of those audiences? And do your messages reflect the things that we've been learning that are important in a crisis, right? So, information, what information you're giving, how much information, is there honesty? Is there transparency? How are you framing it? All of those things, okay? And so you'll do that. And then we're going to talk about very old case, but really gets held up as the sort of pinnacle, I think, of crisis communication, which was Tylenol's tampered bottles, and something that could have potentially ruined their company really didn't, and they took so many actions, both immediately and long-term, and really changed the way that we access medication, with tamper-proof seals and those kind of things. So, yes. And so these articles also. So again, building to this idea of communication plan, I know last week, I believe, maybe it was the week before, I shared some resources for communication plans. A lot of times people are like, is there a specific format? And there's really not. I really just highly recommend that you Google. I found a few sites that I thought were really useful. This one is ready.gov, and it's just really about how the government sort of gives an idea of how to deal with different types of disasters. So there's just a lot of information about that. But this crisis communication plan, pet peeve, they said communications, and we all know it should just be communication. But it really talks about, who are the audiences? Where do we get their contact information? What do we need to consider when it thinks about messages? What are people's concerns, talking about that. So helpful. And then really just, even if you Google like crisis communication plan, you'll find things from a lot of these are from agencies, but I found things from the agricultural sector, the healthcare sector, and there's a lot of overlap, but I think it's sometimes really helpful to see what other people want. Like here's, you know, the plan, who's on the team, what are your key messages, what are internal communication procedures. I think that's a really important element that a lot of times we're very focused on the outward of crisis, sort of like what's going on with the public. But in a crisis as well, how do you communicate what's happening to internal people, and also making sure that is your messaging consistent, and how are you going to keep that? Let's see. And then, here, like, just to really simplify it, this was actually from the UK, talking about immunization and really breaking it down into like the real core of this. And what we're doing is to decide on your overarching objectives. So what is your goal in managing the crisis? Is it to protect reputation? Is it to repair reputation? Is it to save lives because we're having a natural disaster? Is it to like mitigate damage? Define your target audiences. So who do you need to communicate to? Choose your messages and select the channels. So this is at the most basic level what we are looking for here. So this week what I'll be doing is looking at your outlines and trying to give you a lot of feedback on those. I'm going to prioritize giving you feedback on those before I grade the discussion posts, just because the more time I feel like I can give you to sort of take whatever suggestions I have and flesh that into your final paper, which is due at the end of next week. So again, as always, if you have any questions about that assignment, post them on, the class discussion board, or send me an email, and I'm happy to meet via Zoom or phone call with anyone to talk about their questions. And then obviously this week you'll be working on both this discussion and this mock crisis drill. So I hope you have a great week, and if you are in a cold place, I hope you stay warm, and I will see you on the discussion boards.